Welcome to the world of science fiction and forgotten worlds. Alien Universe. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and never miss a new movies and story from this channel. No alarms rang when the humans volunteered. No one stood up in shock. No one tried to stop them. Because in the grand assembly of 700 worlds, humans were not seen as a threat, or even as a real power. They were listed at the very bottom of every measurable scale. Lowest strength, lowest technology, lowest lifespan, lowest military rating. A species famous for surviving disasters, not for winning wars. So when the mission was announced, the chamber was silent for a different reason. The assignment was simple to say and impossible to survive. Travel beyond the mapped edge of the galaxy. Enter the red silence. Locate the source of the signal. That had already destroyed 3 advanced fleets, and if possible, shut it down. No one wanted it. The Van Ern refused. The Korth said it was a suicide order. Even the machine souls of Talrix declined, calculating a 0.2% survival. Chance. Then a human delegate stood up and said, "We'll go." At first, there was confusion. Some thought it was a translation error. Others believed it was a joke. The weakest species, volunteering for the hardest mission? It sounded like a ceremonial gesture, a way for a small civilization to feel important before disappearing. The council accepted immediately, not out of respect, but out of convenience. A problem had been assigned to someone disposable. The humans were given a single ship, an outdated long-range vessel that had once been used for cargo. No escort, no experimental weapons, no advanced shielding. Just basic supplies and a navigation path that ended at the edge of known space. The official records called it a symbolic opportunity. Unofficially, it was a burial. But the humans did not react like a species walking toward death. They did not protest. They did not negotiate for better equipment. They did not ask for backup. They only asked for time. 30 standard days. The council granted it, assuming they wanted to prepare farewell messages. Instead, the humans began doing something strange. They contacted old colonies, mining stations, research outposts, even abandoned settlements that were no longer on any active map. Small signals, quiet requests. They gathered volunteers, not soldiers, but engineers, farmers, mechanics, doctors, teachers. People who had never seen battle, but who knew how to fix broken things and survive in places where survival was not expected. Other species watched with mild amusement. A mission that had erased war fleets was now being approached by a crew that looked like a civilian transport list. No elite commandos, no genetic warriors, no combat drones. Just ordinary humans carrying tools, books, and containers of soil. On the final day before departure, the human ship was still visibly weak. Its hull carried patches from different alloys. Its engines were older than some civilizations. But its cargo hold was full, not with weapons, but with equipment that did not match any military doctrine. Modular habitats, atmospheric processors, seed banks, medical bays, and thousands of small autonomous drones designed for construction, not combat. When asked why they were not preparing for war, the human captain gave a simple answer. "We're not going to fight the red silence," she said. "We're going to outlast it." The statement spread through the assembly networks and became a source of quiet humor. Outlast a force that erased fleets in seconds? Outlast a region of space where even signals died. It sounded like denial, the final stage before extinction. The ship departed without ceremony. No escort followed. No one expected a report. 3 weeks later, a faint transmission reached the edge of council space. Not a distress call. Not a final message. A status update. Entering red silence. Systems holding. Beginning Phase 1. The council archives marked it as irrelevant. and moved on. But something else happened at the border of the red silence, something no one had ever recorded before. The human ship did not accelerate into the anomaly. It stopped. It unfolded structures from its hull like the opening of mechanical wings. Small drones spread outward, forming a loose network behind the ship, creating a trail of synchronized beacons, a path. For the first time in recorded history, a vessel did not rush into the unknown. It built a road into it. Inside the red silence, sensors did not fail completely. They degraded slowly, like lights dimming rather than switching off. The humans adjusted, not by pushing their systems harder, but by lowering their energy output, matching the environment instead of resisting it. They moved at a fraction of normal speed, conserving power, mapping space centimeter by centimeter. Hours became days. Days became weeks. Still no destruction. Back in the council, analysts began to notice something uncomfortable. The human ship was still transmitting. Weak signals, but consistent. The mission that should have ended instantly was continuing. Then the signal changed. Phase 1 complete. Establishing anchor point. No one knew what that meant. There had never been phases in a suicide mission. Far inside the red silence, the humans deployed their first habitat module. Not a weapon, not a probe, but a station. It locked into position and activated a localized field that stabilized the surrounding space. The anomaly did not vanish, but it stopped fluctuating violently in that small area. A pocket of calm inside a storm that had destroyed fleets. The humans had not come to pass through the red silence. They had come to settle inside it. And for the first time, the council stopped laughing. Because the weakest species had not chosen the hardest mission to prove they were strong. They had chosen it because they were the only ones who knew how to survive where victory was impossible. And they were only at phase 1. The next transmission arrived 2 days later, and this time the council did not ignore it. They played it in the central chamber, with every delegate listening in silence. The human captain's voice was calm, almost casual, like she was reporting. A routine supply run. Anchor point 1 is stable. We've named it Lantern. Beginning phase 2. We're going deeper. A murmur passed through the assembly. Lantern was not a military word. It sounded like something you built for travelers, not for conquerors. The Korth War admirals demanded to know what stabilizing field the humans were using, but the human channel did not answer questions. It simply continued moving. Weeks earlier, the red silence had swallowed entire fleets without leaving debris, without even leaving radiation trails. The council expected the humans to vanish the moment they crossed the line. Instead, they were cutting the anomaly into pieces, creating small islands of safety. And now they were heading toward the center, the place no probe had ever returned from. Inside the red silence, the crew learned the first real truth. The region was not empty. It was full of pressure, like invisible gravity waves, pressing down on electronics, on metal, even on thought. The ship's instruments drifted out of alignment, then corrected, then drifted again. Messages repeated in strange loops. Sometimes the crew would hear their own voices in the comms, speaking sentences they had not said yet. Nobody panicked. They had expected this. Not because they understood alien physics, but because they understood something older and simpler. When the world becomes unstable, you do not argue with it. You build routines. You build anchors. You build trust. The humans divided the mission into work, not fear. One team handled hull repair. One handled energy control. One handled food production. One handled sleep cycles. The ship was not just a vehicle. It was a moving town held together by habits. Then the first attack happened. It did not look like an enemy ship. It looked like a sudden clean silence inside their own silence. The lights dimmed and went out. The screens turned black. The engine sound stopped. The air recycler stuttered, like it was choking. For 5 seconds, the ship was dead. 5 seconds was enough to kill most crews. Panic would rise, oxygen would drop, and someone would trigger emergency power, spiking energy output. That spike was exactly what destroyed the other fleets. The red silence fed on strong signals, on sharp power, on bright resistance. It punished anything that screamed, but the humans did not scream. Emergency lights came on, not bright, but soft. Hand lamps clicked. Mechanical valves were turned by hand. The captain spoke in the dark. No surge, no spike. Manual only. Breathe slow. They had drilled this scenario. They called it the quiet fall. It was a survival lesson from their own history, from submarines, from disasters, from nights when cities went dark. They moved like people who had lived through worse. Power returned, slowly, like a heart restarting. The ship limped forward, weaker than before, but still alive, and the humans learned the second truth. The red silence was not random. It was reacting. It was watching. 2 days later, they reached the limit where even their drone trail could not hold a stable signal. The space ahead was thicker, heavier, like a storm wall. This was where the Talrix probes had stopped sending. This was where 3 fleets had died. The human ship stopped again. Back in the council chamber, the live feed showed a strange image. The ship's outer frames opened, and instead of launching weapons, it launched more habitat modules. One after another, they locked into place like stepping stones. The humans were building a chain of safe zones, pushing their road forward. The Korth War Admiral scoffed. They're wasting time. They should strike the source. A Talrix machine priest answered in a voice made of static. They cannot strike what they cannot reach. They are creating reach. The humans called the second anchor point bridge, and they built a third, harbor. Each one carried parts of the ship's burden. Extra oxygen, extra batteries, spare, HUL plates, medical supplies. In any other mission, this would look like fear, like hesitation. Here it was something else. It was adaptation, turned into strategy. And the signal came again, stronger than before, but not from the humans. A new transmission, pulsing in the yaw. Red silence, repeating the same pattern that had lured fleets to destruction. It was not a language. It was a rhythm that made sensors lock on and engines accelerate, like a trap designed for anyone who trusted machines. The human crew listened to it in silence. One engineer finally whispered, "It sounds like a heartbeat." The captain didn't answer immediately. She stared at the readout, her jaw tight. Then she said, "No, it sounds like bait." They did not chase it. They did something that made the council chamber erupt in confusion. They answered it, not with a loud broadcast, not with a military ping, with a low, simple pulse, weaker than a civilian beacon. The human signal was almost nothing, but it carried one thing the red silence had never faced before. Pattern. The human pulse repeated in a way that was not greedy, not aggressive. It was steady, patient, a message that said, "We are here, and we are not rushing." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the red silence shifted. The pressure waves changed direction, like the region had turned its attention. The trap signal stuttered. For the first time, it broke rhythm, like an animal that had been startled. And in that tiny break, the human sensors caught something deep ahead. Not a ship, not a weapon, a structure, vast, dark, and buried in the anomaly like a bone in frozen ground. The captain sent the next report to the council with a voice that was no longer casual. "We found it, but it's not what we thought." A pause, a breath. "It's not a beacon, it's a cage." And then, before anyone could ask what she meant, the human transmission ended mid-sentence, cut off so sharply that the entire assembly went silent, staring at the blank screen, because the red silence had finally decided to respond. For 9 hours, there was nothing. No signal, no weak pulse, not even the soft system pings the humans had been sending like breadcrumbs. The council's analysts replayed the last words again and again. It's a cage. A cage meant something was trapped, or something was being kept away. Either way, it meant the red silence was not just a hazard. It was a decision. The first species to break the silence in the chamber was the Varane, their voices trembling with old fear. If it is a cage, they said, then the fleets were not destroyed. They were swallowed. The Korth laughed, but it sounded forced. Swallowed by what? Space? The Talric's machine priests ran calculations until their processors overheated. None of their models fit. The anomaly was behaving like a living defense system, reacting to energy, reacting to urgency, reacting to the very instinct to conquer. Then, finally, the humans returned. The screen flickered. The audio came first, rough and distorted. Breathing. Tools clanking. Someone coughing. A captain's voice broke through, not calm this time, but controlled. "Council," she said, "we're alive, but we've been moved." The chamber erupted, voices demanding explanations, but the human feed continued without waiting. "We lost main power. No surge, no spike, like we trained. But the red silence didn't need us to surge. It grabbed us anyway." The video cleared. Enough to show the ship's interior. Lights were dim. The crew looked exhausted. Some had bruises. One person had a bandaged arm. The ship had not been torn apart, but it had been shaken like a toy. Then the captain turned the camera toward a window. Outside was darkness, but not empty darkness. Lines of pale light ran across space like veins. Huge, slow pulses moved through them. And in the distance, barely visible, was the structure they had found. It was massive, wider than a moon, shaped like a ring that had been broken and repaired 1,000 times. It wasn't built from smooth metal. It looked grown, layered, like bone and glass fused together. Around it, thousands of objects floated in stillness. Ships, different sizes, different designs. Some were ancient. Some were recent. Some still carried faint lights, frozen in place like insects trapped in amber. Entire fleets had not been destroyed. They had been collected. That's why nobody found wreckage, the captain said. They weren't blown up. They were stored. A Korth admiral leaned forward in the chamber. "Ord One, salvage weapons. Take control." The captain's eyes hardened. "You still don't understand. This place punishes the thinking." She panned the camera again, and the council saw something worse. Between the trapped ships, thin structures stretched like threads. Not wires, not beams. They looked like tendons, connecting ship to ring as if each vessel was part of a system. Then the human captain whispered, "And it's not empty." A shape moved behind the nearest trapped cruiser. It wasn't fast. It didn't chase. It simply drifted into view, as if it had been waiting to be noticed. It looked like a jellyfish made of shadow, with long trailing strands of light. But it was huge, larger than the human ship. Its body pulsed gently, and every pulse made the red silence ripple. The creature did not transmit language. It did not fire weapons. It just watched. One of the human engineers spoke quietly, off camera. "It's like a warden," the captain nodded. "That's exactly what it is. This ring is a prison system, and that thing is the guard." Back in the council chamber, panic finally arrived. Delegates shouted to send fleets, to bomb the region, to destroy the ring before it could expand. The weakest species had wandered into a prison in deep space. surrounded by trapped armadas and a living guardian. Then the captain raised her hand, and her crew fell silent. "We're not going to attack it," she said. "We're going to talk." The fourth admiral slammed his fist. "You can't talk to a monster." The human captain's voice sharpened. "You can. You just don't know how." Every fleet that entered here came like a spear. This place reacts to spears. We came like builders, like caretakers, like people who fix broken things, and that's why we're still breathing. She paused, then spoke lower. "We think the prison is reacting to intent. Aggression spikes the field. Curiosity triggers capture. But patience creates tolerance." The Talric's machine priest processed the statement. "You are suggesting a sentient security protocol." "Yes," the captain said. "A living system designed to stop expansionist species from reaching something dangerous. It doesn't hate you. It just stops you." A Varan elder whispered, "What is it stopping us from reaching?" The human captain looked away from the camera window and swallowed. "We don't know yet, but we can feel it. There's something in the center of the ring, deeper than our sensors, and the whole red silence is wrapped around it like a wound dressing." Another pulse rolled through space. The shadow creature drifted closer. Its long strands brushed the human ship's hull. The lights in the cabin flickered, but the ship did not fail. It was as if the creature was tasting them, measuring them. The captain spoke softly, as if she were speaking to an animal. "We're not here to take. We're not here to break. We are here to understand." For a moment, the creature did nothing. Then, one of its strands reached toward the human ship's deployed drone bay, and the drones inside activated automatically, sensing contact. They began to spin up, preparing to launch, their tiny motors whining. The captain snapped, "Kill the motors." "Now." The engineer hesitated. "But now." The motors shut down. The drones went still. The ship went quiet again. The creature paused, and then slowly drifted away, like it had just decided something. The captain exhaled. "Did you see that? It reacted to the motor noise. It reacted to the preparation. It reacted to the idea of action." She turned back to the camera. "Council, listen to me carefully. If you send fleets, you will add thousands of voices screaming into a place that hates screams. You will trigger the prison. You will not save us. You will join the Zin collection." The chamber went cold. The human captain continued, "We have one advantage you don't. We are used to being weak. We are used to surviving with less. We are used to stopping, thinking, adapting, and trying again. That's our weapon." She looked back out the window. The Guardian was circling them now, slow, patient, like it was waiting for the humans to make the same mistake as everyone else. The captain's voice dropped to a whisper. "Phase 3 begins now. We're going to open the cage," without setting off the alarm. And then the feed cut again, not by failure this time, but by choice, leaving the council staring at silence, realizing with a deep fear that the humans were walking straight toward the heart of the prison, not with missiles, not with patience. The humans did not move toward the center. That was the first surprise. Every trapped fleet had been pointed inward, engines frozen in the exact direction of the ring's core, as if they had all tried to rush the same target. The human ship turned away from it instead, drifting sideways along the inside edge of the prison, following the broken segments of the massive structure. In the council chamber, confusion turned into anger. "They're retreating," a fourth admiral said. "They've lost their nerve." But the Talric's machine priest spoke in a low, processed tone. "Negative. They are mapping the boundary." Inside the red silence, the human crew moved slowly, deploying small sensor pods at measured intervals, each one powered at the lowest possible output. The ship did not accelerate. It coasted. It waited between movements, allowing the field to settle before acting again. They were not trying to escape. They were studying the cage, and then they saw it. One section of the ring was different. The bone-like layers were cracked, peeled outward as if something inside had once pushed against it. The light veins around that section flickered unevenly. The guardian creature did not patrol there. It kept its distance, circling the opposite side. "That's not damage," the captain said quietly. "That's a door." The engineer shook his head. "Or a wound." The captain replied, "Same thing." Back in the council, a Valran elder leaned forward. "If there is a breach, then whatever is inside may be escaping." The human transmission resumed just long enough for the captain to answer, as if she had heard the thought across light years. "No, it's not escaping. It's trying to get out." The words hit the chamber like a shock wave. Every model the council had assumed was wrong. They believed the red silence was protecting the galaxy from something imprisoned. But the humans were suggesting the opposite. The prison was not holding a monster in. It was holding something out. Inside the ring, beyond the cracked segment, space looked wrong. Not dark, not silent, but bright in a way that hurt the eyes. Shapes moved there, too fast to track, leaving trails that bent light. The ship's sensors refused to lock on, reporting impossible readings, negative mass, reverse time drift, energy signatures that did not decay. One of the human scientists whispered, "That's not a star system. That's not even our physics." The captain's voice was tight. "Then the prison isn't a cage. It's a shield." A long pause filled the ship. "Shielding us from—" "What?" someone asked. The answer came from the Guardian. For the first time, it transmitted something that resembled communication. Not words, but a pattern that the human translation software struggled to interpret. It wasn't language in the normal sense. It was more like a memory, a compressed burst of sensation. The crew felt it as much as they heard it. Expansion, hunger, fleets spreading like fire, worlds stripped for resources, civilizations collapsing under faster and faster growth. And then, beyond the broken ring, something noticing. Something vast. Something that did not see ships or species, only energy, only activity, only movement that could be consumed. The humans staggered as the vision ended. The captain grabbed the console to steady herself. "It's not guarding a prisoner," she said hoarsely. "It's hiding us." Back in the council chamber, silence fell heavier than before. Every empire present had built its power on expansion. Colonies, mining worlds, energy harvesting arrays. They had always assumed growth was survival. But what if growth was a signal? The Talric's machine priest processed the transmission. Conclusion: the red silence reduces detectable activity. It suppresses high energy output. It enforces stillness. It is camouflage on a galactic scale. The Varan elder's voice trembled. "And the fleets that rushed the center?" The human captain answered softly. "They triggered the alarm. The trapped ships were not trophies. They were quarantined. Every fleet that entered with weapons hot, engines burning, sensors screaming, had broadcast the same message into the bright region beyond the ring. Here we are." The Guardian had stopped them, not to protect the prison, but to protect the galaxy from being noticed. The big twist settled over the council like cold ash. The red silence was not a threat. It was a warning. And it was failing. The cracked section of the ring meant something had already pushed through once. The light beyond it pulsed, brighter than before, as if testing the barrier. The Guardian's patrol was slower, its movements heavier, like a sentinel that had been standing watch for too long. Inside the human ship, fear finally appeared, but it did not become panic. It became focus. "If the shield breaks," the engineer said, Every high-energy civilization becomes a beacon. The captain nodded. Every empire, every fleet, every reactor. And us? Someone asked. The captain gave a small, tired smile. We're still the weakest species, remember? Low energy, low output, slow expansion. We barely register. That was why the Guardian had tolerated them. That was why they had survived where fleets had failed. They were quiet enough to approach a system designed to hide. Back in the council chamber, the 4th Admiral spoke in a voice stripped of arrogance. What do you need? It was the first time the strongest military in the galaxy had asked the weakest species for instructions. The human captain took a long breath before answering. We need you to do the one thing your empires have never done, she said. We need you to stop. Stop what? The Admiral asked. Everything, she replied. Shut down your high-energy grids. Power down your war fleets. Reduce your signals. Go dark. If the thing beyond the ring notices you, the red silence won't be able to hide you. Panic rose again in the chamber. Entire economies depended on constant output. Entire militaries relied on visible power. Going dark meant vulnerability, but the alternative was worse. The human captain continued, We're going to repair the breach. We're going to reinforce the shield. But we can't do it if you're all screaming into the void. The Talrix machine priest calculated the probabilities. Compliance required for survival. The Varan elder closed their eyes. The weakest species has given us the hardest command. The captain nodded. Yes, and if you finish it first, you might live. She looked back toward the cracked ring, where the impossible light pulsed again, brighter, closer, as if something on the other side had noticed the movement of repair drones. Phase 4 had begun. Not a battle for territory. A race to become invisible. The order to go dark spread across the galaxy like a shockwave no one could see. Empires that had measured their greatness in light suddenly had to measure it in silence. War fleets powered down their reactors. Mining arrays went cold. Trade lanes stopped glowing. For the first time in recorded history, thousands of worlds dimmed at the same time. Panic followed. Economies stalled. Defense networks fell quiet. Old rivalries trembled on the edge of returning. Because when the lights go out, fear usually fills the dark. But something unexpected happened. Nothing attacked. The Korth fleets, stripped of their blazing signatures, discovered that their enemies could not track them either. The Van, who had feared invasion for centuries, realized that in the silence, no one knew where their borders truly were. The Talrix machine minds found that with their processors slowed, their predictions became clearer, not worse. For the first time, the galaxy was not shouting. And far inside the red silence, the humans began the repair. They did not try to close the breach with force. They anchored themselves along the cracked edge of the ring and unfolded every habitat module they had brought. Each one locked into the damaged structure, not replacing it, but supporting it, like braces on a broken bone. Construction drones moved in slow, careful paths, weaving new layers between the old. The humans matched the rhythm of the prison, pulsing their tools in the same quiet pattern the Guardian used. They were not imposing a design. They were listening and copying. The Guardian watched. It drifted close enough that its light strands brushed the new framework. Several times, the human systems flickered, threatening to spike. Each time, the crew shut down non-essential power, breathing in the dim glow of emergency lamps, waiting for the field to settle before continuing. Days passed, then weeks. Beyond the breach, the bright region pulsed harder, as if testing the growing patch. Shapes moved against the barrier, vast and patient. The humans never tried to study them directly. They kept their sensors low, refusing to give whatever was out there a clear signal to follow. Back in the council chamber, the reports came in fragments. Energy output across the galaxy had dropped to the lowest level since interstellar travel began. Entire species were learning to live slower, quieter, more carefully. It was not just survival. It was transformation. The weakest species had not only taken the hardest mission, they had changed the definition of strength. Inside the red silence, the final segment of the repair locked into place. The broken ring sealed with a dull, almost organic glow. The pressure. Waves around it smoothed, becoming steady for the first time in ages. The Guardian approached the human ship one last time. Its light pulsed in a new pattern, slower than before. The translation system struggled, then produced a simple interpretation. Hidden, safe, grateful. The captain exhaled a breath she had been holding for months. "You're welcome," she whispered. Then something even stranger happened. One by one, the trapped ships around the ring began to power down completely. Not destroyed, not released, but gently lowered into deeper stillness, as if the prison no longer needed to hold them so tightly. The quarantine was easing. The humans did not celebrate. They were too tired for that. They simply sent one final transmission. Phase 4 complete. Shield stabilized. Recommend continued low-energy policy. Mission finished. In the council chamber, no one spoke for a long time. The Corps Admiral, once the loudest voice for war, stood and bowed his head toward the silent screen. The Varan Elder followed. Even the Talric's machine priests dimmed their lights in a gesture that had never been recorded before. The weakest species had been given the hardest mission because no one else wanted it, because everyone assumed they would fail. But they had succeeded for the same reason. They did not measure victory in destruction. They measured it in survival, in patience, in the ability to endure without being seen as powerful. Months later, when the human ship finally returned, there was no parade, no fireworks, no blazing welcome beacons. The galaxy was still practicing silence. Instead, every world dimmed its lights for 1 minute as the ship crossed into known space. A quiet honor. The captain's final report was short. "We didn't win a war," she said. "We learned how not to start one." And in the years that followed, the red silence was no longer feared. It became a sanctuary, a place where ships went dark and rested, where civilizations remembered that survival did not always belong to the strongest. Sometimes it belonged to the species that knew how to be quiet long enough to understand them. Universe. The weakest species got the hardest mission. They finished it first. And they taught the galaxy that the loudest signal is not always the one that lives the longest.